Live from YouTube.com's Creator Studio. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Google's one and only Ren's Reviews.
What's up, everybody? It's me, your favorite little boy in the whole wide world, Ren with two N's. And let me tell you, I knew nothing about this game going into it, apart from the fact that I was most definitely gonna play it, because I've always been a big fan of Remedy's games. And while I wasn't too fond of Quantum Break, I really enjoyed Alan Wake, and I loved Max Payne on the original Xbox when I was a kid. But I feel that going into a game blind is the best way to experience a video game, because this whole industry is built on over-promising and over-hyping only to under-deliver when the game finally launches. Even with that being said, a good game will still struggle to live up to the 1 or 2 years of hype that came before it, which is why I've grown to avoid trailers and gameplay previews. So in case you don't know, in Control, you play as a long-chinned ginger named Jessie, and she is a total cunt. Control freak. She stumbled her way into the Federal Bureau of Control, a top-secret government facility that is filled to the brim with metaphysical entities, and upon her entry, she almost immediately became director of the joint. The entire building is also in a lockdown because it's been overtaken by the Hiss, a potentially world-ending paranormal force, and it's up to this old broad to send the Hiss back from where they came. That's the basic plot of this game, and I'm sure I'm not the first person to be making this comparison, but the Federal Bureau of Control is essentially a ripoff of SCP, which was all the rage nearly a decade ago. You guys remember this? But that's all fine and dandy with me, because if I'm honest, I've wanted a proper AAA SCP experience for like, what, 8 years now? Ever since I forced my friend Patrick to play through SCP Containment Breach.
Uh-oh. Whoa! Back up, back up.
Back up. What do I do?
You're right. Go out the door. Close it.
When I booted up Control, I wasn't expecting a full-on SCP ripoff, but I fully welcomed it. The whole top-secret agency thing adds a lot of atmosphere to the game. Traversing through the building and uncovering its secrets as you go was partially what kept me hooked. Control gives you a lot of reasons to explore the environment. Like there's these little collectible documents that give you more information on several of the paranormally altered items that have been locked up within the Bureau. Some of these make for an interesting read. While walking through the facility, you'll also organically stumble into some side quests. Now I won't spoil what happens in these side missions, because discovering this stuff all on your own is half the fun. But you really do feel like you're uncovering some top-level government secrets. Like, you know, you're poking around some place you don't belong. And a lot of these side quests come with their own gimmick or mechanic that separates them from the rest of the game. They're all mostly worth doing. There were a small handful of boring quests, you know, like go kill 6 guys or go shoot 6 things off of the wall. But as a whole, these side quests are very much worth your time. And as if lore and side quests weren't enough incentivization for you to explore the environment, there's also several boxes hidden all over the building which contain mods. The mods are essentially perks. After you pick them up, you can assign these mods to your weapons or even to Jessie. So the exploration goes hand in hand with the combat. It's a nice little gameplay loop. The perks that the mods provide are very surface level. It's not a very deep system, but it doesn't have to be. If you're a writer for Polygon and you die all the time, that's fine. Just apply some mods that give you extra health so you can stay alive longer. If you like shooting Hiss in the face, assign a mod to your gun that deals extra headshot damage. Like I said, it's not a very deep system, but these perks allow you to really double down on a certain playstyle, or make transitioning to another playstyle a little bit more smooth. If there's a mod that you don't like, or maybe you have a better version of that mod, you can just dismantle it for currency and use that currency to purchase mods from control points. You gotta give the game props. This would have been the perfect place to shoehorn in microtransactions, but at least as far as I'm aware, there aren't any microtransactions in this game. So that's good. But I never saw any reason to purchase my own mods, because I found plenty of them out in the wild. So buying them seemed like a waste of resources to me. But having said that, let me give you guys a piece of advice. If you are planning on playing this game, or maybe you're still in the middle of your playthrough, make sure you purchase the mod accelerators whenever you can, because these enhancements are vital. It makes the drops that you get from boxes, bounties, and dead enemies drop at a higher tier. So if you don't buy this upgrade, you'll mostly be finding weaker mods. And the reason I'm telling you guys about this is because a friend of mine ignored this upgrade completely, and I think it probably hindered his playthrough a bit. So keep that in mind. Control has excellent gameplay. It's mainly what kept me glued to this game for 2 days straight. This game gives you a lot of neat abilities. Neat abilities that would make any other woman jealous, like the launch ability, which allows you to telekinetically pick up just about any object and toss it at bad guys. It also makes womanly duties, such as doing the laundry, doing the dishes, and childbirth, very simplistic. You also get a shield ability, which blocks any and all incoming damage for a short amount of time. There's also the seize ability. I knew a kid in high school that had this skill, but in the game, it works a little bit differently than it does in real life. Seize temporarily converts your enemies into allies via mind control. And finally, there's the levitation ability. At first I thought this would be a weak little double jump or maybe a slow descent, but no, it was a full-on Criss Angel levitation. Floating around felt so freeing. It was way more fun than it should have been. In practice, combining all of these abilities together with the decent gunplay led to a lot of fun, especially since nearly every environment was fully interactable and destructible. I absolutely love the physics of this game. I wish every modern-day action game had destructible environments, because destruction gives so much weight to each gunshot. So much impact to each ability, and so much intensity to each fight. You couldn't have picked a better game to have fully interactable environments either. I mean, you've got telekinesis here, for Christ's sake. You can pick up just about everything. I can't overstate how much fun it is to toss a forklift at a bad guy. But here's the thing. I think the launch ability is just flat out overpowered, because I never really saw any reason to use the shield or the seize ability. I mean, why bother blocking damage when I can just dash away from it by using the evade ability instead? And why bother converting an enemy into an ally when in the time it would have taken me to convert him, I could have just killed 4 guys with an office chair? And that segues into my biggest gripe with the gameplay, which is, you guessed it, that this game is just too easy. You don't even need to aim at the enemies to kill them with the launch ability. The game just locks onto them for you. And the enemy AI is flat out terrible as well. They don't do much apart from the standard stuff, like take cover or slowly walk towards you. They don't try to flank you or outsmart you or anything like that. And normally this is where I would really lay into the game for being too easy. I'd probably make some sort of joke about how that kid I knew in high school could beat this game during one of his seizures, but not today. Control gets a pass, because an easy game doesn't always equate to a boring game, so long as the combat is still fun or engaging. And in Control, it's both. Now compare that to Far Cry New Dawn, another game which I complained was far too easy. New Dawn had me snoozing through all of the outposts, since the enemy AI in that game is just, terrible. And you can see enemies through walls, and in some cases your companion can just handle all of the work for you and single-handedly complete the game's hardest activity without you even having to lift a finger. It's just not engaging. But Control is. And while Control was too easy for my tastes, I still had to watch my energy meter and make sure I wasn't running out of it at the wrong time. I couldn't hide behind one piece of cover for too long, because eventually the enemies would destroy it and I'd have to move. I also had to think about when my levitation was going to run out, so that I didn't get caught out in the open once I hit the ground, because if you don't pay attention, the enemies can kill you relatively quickly. But the point is, I was constantly making decisions. I was always in the moment, and it was fun. It never got old. old over the 10 or so hours I spent playing the game. It also fulfilled a power fantasy. I felt like a god, raining hell down on weaklings. But even with that being said, I can't help but wonder if killing an enemy would have felt more satisfying if they were tougher to defeat. Because there was one optional boss that actually gave me a hard time. It took me like 4 or 5 attempts to kill this guy. It was the Tomasi fight, and this encounter is admittedly very cheap. The boss does so much damage to you. Ads spawn in pretty consistently, one of which is invisible and also does insane damage to you. On top of all of that, the boss can also dodge your launch attacks, but you need to hit him with a launch attack to get rid of his shield. This fight is cheap and frustrating, but I loved it, because it was the only encounter in the game that got my blood pumping, that made me really try. And after I killed him, I felt pretty accomplished. It made me wish that at the very least, I could have had the option to bump this game up to hard mode, but you can't. This game only has one difficulty. Before wrapping up, I gotta talk about the story, which ultimately left me pretty dissatisfied. I'll be keeping this spoiler-free for right now, but part of my issue is that this game only has a couple of real, actual traditional cutscenes. Mostly everything else is just pure, raw exposition during a conversation. You know, Mass Effect style. There's no interesting cinematography here, they all take place in the same few rooms, and it's just your basic shot, reverse shot, and these conversations take up about, I don't know, 80% of the game's story? And even though a lot of the information provided in these conversations was interesting, I still found myself kinda daydreaming about something else during these scenes. They're just so dry. And Jessie's character was just so one-dimensional. She didn't have much going on with her personality. I will say though, I really enjoyed Dr. Darling's character. I just found him so likable. He had so much charisma, and he had this infectious excitement about each new discovery he had made.
It's an object of power. OOP. Oops. Oh, and it can launch things telekinetically through the air. To date, we've launched maybe 3 dozen pencils. And once, we even launched a cup.
Alright. And I think this was easily Remedy's best attempt at putting live-action video into their game. Whereas in Quantum Break, I thought it was a bit distracting and out of place. The cutscenes were literally just, you know, episodes of a television show. It was interesting and I appreciated that it was something a bit different, but I just couldn't get into it. The special effects didn't help much either. But getting back on track, the live-action scenes with Dr. Darling are very reserved in comparison. They're all optional as well, so if you aren't interested in what he has to say, you can just leave the room and progress the game. Same for the conversations, now that I think about it. You can just not click on any of these options if all you want to do is float around and kill bad guys. But I do think the live-action monologues helped to make this game's fiction feel a bit more real. Seeing a real human being on the other side of the camera made the world feel a bit more believable to me. Now, from here on out, I will be doing spoilers. I will say though, there really isn't a whole lot to spoil, but if you're still concerned about it, skip to this part of the video if you want your playthrough to remain untarnished. So, my biggest issue with the story was just how simplistic it was. I mean, we're dealing with a world that has fringe science, you know, alternate realities, paranormal entities, celestial beings. So because the setting of this game was anything but ordinary, I kept expecting a twist, or a surprise, some sort of left turn that could catch me off guard, but it never came. I was constantly making predictions about the characters, like maybe Jessie swapped out with another Jessie from an alternate dimension when she was a kid. Or I thought that maybe the blonde chick would turn out to be secretly evil and had masterminded this entire situation to get rid of Trench and Darling. My head was constantly swirling with so many theories all throughout, but ultimately, what you see and what they tell you is what you get. The story was just a straight line from A to B. You show up, you're the new director, you want to save your brother, and you gotta fight the hiss. The story had so many opportunities to go on an untraditional, postmodern storytelling route, to do something interesting or unexpected that most people haven't seen before. And there are so many story elements that were left unresolved. Like, I'm very unclear on what happened to Dr. Darling. I talked to the blonde chick with the stuffy nose about it, but I'm still pretty clueless. Dylan is just stuck in a coma? That plot point of him escaping custody only to then turn himself in didn't really amount to much. That would have been effectively the same thing if he were in his original containment cell, and we never learned what the deal is with the janitor. As it stands now, Ahti is nothing more than a convenient plot device. It feels more like they were holding off for a sequel or even DLCs to answer these questions. I would have preferred having a complete story rather than feeling like I need to purchase additional content for some sort of resolution. Not a good move on their part, because I would have been more than willing to purchase DLC that was nothing more than what the side quests equated to, like having to recapture paranormal objects. I could do that all day. But over the span of this 10-hour game, not much happened plot-wise. The story felt like it was all set up with no payoffs. There's still so many unresolved plot threads that make the story as a whole feel kinda like a waste of time. And apart from the fake out with the ending credits, which I will admit that one got me pretty good, the story just didn't have any surprises. Even though it's not perfect, this game is dynamite. Control is pretty much everything I look for in a video game. It's got a finished campaign with insanely fun gameplay, a somewhat complete story, and on PC it felt very polished. I didn't run into any bugs or glitches. It was overall a very pleasant experience, which is why I give Control an 8 out of 10. If it had a more complete story, was slightly more difficult with smarter AI, and had some replay value, because as of now it has none, it'd probably be a 10 out of 10. It came so close, but who knows? If we get a sequel, maybe it'll reach that full potential. But that's all I have to say about Control. I can't imagine I had a whole lot to add to the overall discussion of this game, but I wanted to take this opportunity to praise a modern-day AAA video game, which isn't something I get to do too often. I really miss games like this. Nice 8 to 10 hour complete single-player experiences. No co-op, no forced online requirements, no microtransactions, just a game built by a passionate, competent developer. We need games like this so badly in today's market, and I wish they weren't as rare as they are. But big shout out to my patron, Sebastian Schiegel, for giving me his epic username and password so that I could play this game. Without him, this video wouldn't exist. And speaking of Patreons, maybe consider becoming one. I'm getting so close to my first goal, and the support from all these lovely beauties is immensely helpful. I cannot express my gratitude enough. These people are doing the Lord's work. Also, go follow me on Twitter. I have a lot of fun over there. Join my Discord server if you think you got the guts. And I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks when I finally release that Halo Reach video I've been talking about. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.